Let's get real here and brutally honest about the reality of building a house in Poland and in general in 2021 and 2022. Hello and welcome to my channel, welcome back, and today I'm going to give you all the details of how the process looked like for us to build a house in Poland in 2021, 2022. It might look different in other parts of the world, but this is the experience we had, and I want to give you all the details and not to sugarcoat anything, but the reality of building a house in Poland and what the price is. Maybe not the financial price, but the price of building a house. So, in order for you to understand the whole process, we have to wind back to 2019. We actually bought our piece of land, our plot, in 2019. I only shared it a year later in 2020, but the prices were then moderate. It was before the lockdowns, before everything, so we were very lucky to have acquired that piece of land and have it finalized in 2020. And that process was painless. In 2020, late spring, summer, April, May, we started the whole process of how we were going to go about building this house. So already in spring 2020 we started the application process to get electricity on our plot, because we didn't have water or electricity, and we started that in early summer 2020, and that was one of the things that took the most, but we will get there. In summer 2020 we also contacted an architect to help us with the project for our house. The cheapest and easiest for us was to find a project online, and then he modified that, which also meant that it wasn't completely perfect the way we would have liked to. We would have preferred, for example, to have one room less, but then you would have to make a project from scratch, and that would have cost much more. So an architect had to make a project, and then the project had to be accepted by different officials, by the borough, the municipality, and so on. Also in summer 2020 we contacted a contractor, a person that would actually build our house. So we contacted the contractor, had everything set with him that we would start to build in 2021. We had an architect, and he was finalizing the project. The only negative thing was that it wasn't, the build couldn't be absolutely perfect, for example with one room less, but that was okay. And at the same time we also had to have geological research of the soil on our land to see if it's suitable for building, because it could have happened that the surveyor who was doing the examination, the research, would find that the soil, the ground is too loose or too moist or whatever, and all our plans would fall through. Luckily all was okay, but they did tell that we have a very moist soil, because these used to be pastures and there were crops there growing before, and it was very moist, so we needed to heighten the ground. So that was already something that we had in our minds. The project got accepted by the borough, the officials that needed to accept that, and the geological examination went okay, but we needed to make the ground higher. And that was the end of 2020. You could say we had some things going, and that was, all was going also according to plan. So we have 2021, and you could say that all the hurdles started then, because otherwise everything was going quite smoothly until then in 2020. We knew we wanted to have a wooden house. We would have liked to have logs of wood, but that would have been very expensive. So we stayed with just simple wooden planks. And we had a contractor who knew how to do builds in wood. He had done wooden buildings before, he had constructed wooden buildings before. And here we are, 2021, and no electricity in sight yet. But still, every 1 or 2 months we have to sign some papers, apply for more, stand in telephone queues for hours. It was a nightmare with that energy operator that covers the area where we are building the house. Any contact with that energy operator is a nightmare. We were applying, calling, but hoping that we would have electricity by summer 2021 when we would start to build our house. They said it could take up to 14 months, and if you remember, we started in April, May 2020, so we should have had electricity by summer 2021. Spoiler.
It didn't happen.
But we're not there yet. Also, we didn't have enough money to build the house with our own money, so we knew we had to take a loan from the bank, a mortgage. And the thing was that we would apply for it, we were thinking of applying for it in February 2021, and it would take around 3 months. We were in Egypt in January 2021. You can actually watch that trip. I have a video from that time. My husband just came back in February, back from Egypt. So we didn't start in February, but in March we applied for the loan and all of that. And it didn't take 3 months. It took almost 6 months. So that is the second thing that didn't go the way it was supposed to go. The reason for that was that in 2021 we had already 1 year of lockdowns and 1 year of craziness, and a lot of people started to apply for loans, for mortgages, and the queue became extremely long. The banks had so many applications that they couldn't handle it. Everyone wanted to build a house, everyone wanted to renovate their apartment or build an apartment or take a loan for something else. So that was the reality of 2021. So here we are in June 2021, and we have this situation that the contractor that the date was set wants to start to build our house, and we don't have any money to pay him. It was a nightmare. And also, to take a loan for building a house is completely different than taking a loan for buying an apartment, because they give you the whole sum if you're buying an apartment, but if you're building a house, they are giving you the sum in parts, so you get a little and you have to meet the requirements that this and this is finished, like the foundation, or this is finished, electricity is finished, and then you get another sum, and that is for finishing the interior, and so on. But it was divided for us in 4 parts, and we didn't get it.
Actually, spoiler, until the end of August.
Some by our own mistakes, some by the mistake of the bank, but it was a nightmare. You wouldn't tell if you saw some videos from summer 2021 that I was making, that I was completely and utterly stressed out, but I was. But actually, you could see in summer 2021, so a year ago, I started to do videos less frequently, maybe 2 or 3 a month instead of 4 as I used to. And the whole year it has been like that. Sometimes I've managed to do 4 videos, sometimes I've had only 2, and that was when I wasn't able to handle everything any longer. So he started to build in July 2021, so a little over a year ago, and without us having any money to pay him, and we were completely stressed out, and it was a nightmare, and it was awful. Somehow he waited for the money, but we were under a lot of pressure, and we weren't really sure how things would get resolved if we for some reason didn't get the loan, but we got it in August 2021. So that was a relief. but still no electricity, and he has already started to build the house. Let's also mention water. We didn't have any problems with water. We started to apply to get water on our land in January 2021, and we had it by June, so it took around 6 months. There were also several steps for that, but one of the biggest hurdles was that we had to ask permission of a neighbor that is in front of our land, of our plot, because they had to pull the pipe from his land to our land, and in order to do that, they had to dig up a hole, and the neighbor necessarily didn't have to like this. They were kind enough to allow that for us, so that was a hurdle. I've heard about stories where the neighbor doesn't want to allow the water or electricity to go through his or her land, and you have to find another solution. So
that could have been a problem, but luckily it wasn't.
So a year ago, like in late summer, in autumn, we were building the house, and still no electricity, so the contractor had to have a generator, and it was extremely expensive. It's much more expensive generator to have a generator than a normal electricity. We could have applied for construction electricity, but that would have taken too much time as well, and it's also not that cheap, so we skipped that, and we had a generator for 2 months, almost for 2 months, and it was very expensive, and it was not expected. And we finally got our electricity in like October, November 2021. So delayed by several months. When you build a house, you also need a construction manager, and there are a lot of other things. We had a notebook that we wrote all the steps. My brother was so very kind that he explained all the steps because he knew about them like a year before that, so we had it all written down. But if we didn't have that notebook and writing down all these things, I think we would have missed and delayed things by much longer, and it would have been even more stressful. Even though we knew a lot of things from people who told us, who already went through the process, it still was very stressful. Even now, when I look into that notebook, I was looking it through before making this video. I remember all the stress and tension I was feeling. The build itself, of the exterior, of the walls and so on, all went very well. The contractor was wonderful, but things started to get more and more expensive. We still were lucky that in autumn 2021, so almost a year ago, it still didn't have the inflation, so we managed to put the house without the interior with normal prices. But then it was time for the electrician, the plumber, the boiler, the interior, the
tiles, the doors,
the windows and everything else. And I would say that was the second part of descending into hell. The first part was the loan situation and the electricity situation, and this was the second descent into hell. There were so many things that you cannot imagine, and we were both very stressed, and my husband was working very hard, and we were both very exhausted. It affected me badly, it affected him badly, it affected us badly. It was one of the worst things I've ever done in my life. Honestly, the whole process, if I knew, I still would have done it, but I honestly don't know how you can make things easier in Poland. I mean, you can watch my video about things that shocked me in Poland, and you know that the paperology, like all the papers, all the documents you need, and all the small steps, it's insane. I mean, the bureaucracy is insane. I mean, there are a lot of things that I didn't mention, but I can just mention very quickly. Like, we needed a permission for our entry gate, for our descent into our land from the road. We needed so many things, and there were so many other small things, and papers and documents and fees that needed to be paid, that you could really get exhausted from much less. And then you could say that the finishing line, the winter, half a year ago, the winter, like the finishing the interior, buying all the things needed for the house, that's just the conclusion, the finishing line. That in itself was completely draining. and awful. I mention it sometimes here and there, but it was. I may have done 2, or 3 beautiful videos of the build of our house, but the reality was so much more exhausting, expensive, draining, and stressful. I am sure I have forgotten about some things, all these small things. This is like the general picture of how it looks like to build a house if you want to have electricity and water and you're not living off-grid. This is how it looks like, and now it's even worse because of the prices, and we're affected by the prices, we are affected by the prices now this year in 2022, in spring when we were doing the interior, buying wood, which I already mentioned, and other things. So it would have been best to build a house a few years back. So we were only lucky to acquire the land and do the first steps and have all the prices finalized for the construction itself before the lockdowns. That we were very lucky. But the rest was quite awful. I'm curious, how does it look like to build a house in your countries? I wonder if it's as bureaucratic and a long process as it is here in Poland. For us, it took us 2 whole years since we started all the whole process, and we're still not finished. And bear in mind that we have a wooden house, so it's not made out of concrete. But it took 2 whole years, and then I would say we were still stressing around a lot, and it was done very quickly, even though it was 2 years. If we just had taken more time, we would be going on 3. It would have taken 3, 4, or even 5 years. Maybe if you're not working full time, maybe that's possible to do that quicker. Or if you buy something already finished. So let me know what you think and how the process looks like in your countries. And thank you very much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye.